Hello, and welcome back to our podcast. This is, I believe, the third recording that we're doing, and we're just starting into the new year. So we've just turned over the calendar to 2024. And so Ella and I thought it would be fitting to talk about today and to share things that we're letting go of as we move through this year. So, do you have anything you want to say?
I can't believe, right now while we're filming this, it's at like the halfway point of January. So it's been really interesting to you create your new habits and things you want to go and start doing. And it's kind of like it's not all butterflies and rainbows at first. It's really like playing with and figuring out what works for you. And oh, I didn't know that I would be struggling with this as much. And it's kind of just like a mirror on yourself to kind of see where you're actually at and be even like more inclined to get to where you want to go.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. So we're gonna jump right in. And I'm gonna start. So we're just gonna, is that called volley? We're gonna go back and forth. Or I'll start and I'm sure it will bring up some questions as we just had this quick little huddle before we started recording. And I literally said to Ella, okay, I'm just gonna start recording because there's some good stuff here. I feel like it'll bring up some good conversation. So I'm going to start. Things I'm letting go of. I love this topic because I find that we don't really think, my brain doesn't naturally think in terms of things I'm letting go of in order to create space for new things. And so I started this last year and I love it. I love what it brings up. So number one for me, I'm letting go of things that don't bring me inner peace.
What does that look like?
I think that looks like to me just, I don't know if it's like the woman condition, I want to say the human condition, but a part of being female. We often I let me back up for a second. I want to start by saying a lot of the things that I recognize in myself are mirrored through people that I spend time with, right? As in, I see people holding on to things that cause them like unnecessary discomfort, I would say. And then, on a reflection of those, the people in my life doing that, I realized that, hey, you know what, I actually do the same thing. And I spent probably a lot of my adult life, with maybe this bit of inner turmoil on things. We want everyone around us to feel good. We want everyone around us to feel probably the way that we want to feel inside. And so we make these sacrifices of ourself often to what am I trying to say here? Like the sacrifices that, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's like people pleasing tendencies coming up as, like you said, how would I want to be treated? And then you go above and beyond for people who don't reciprocate at all because they're not at that place. They're only really worried about themselves. So you're giving to, it's almost like trying to fill the ocean with a little cup.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like you're filling your cup and you're emptying it out and you're giving everything you have to everyone and everything. But you're not
Definitely.
keeping your cup full so that you can be your fullest self. You can have
Yeah,
your
for
bucket.
sure. And I say this, I see this as like this mirror reflection where people, um, say they have certain things they value, or they have certain, principles they want to live by. And they bend around other people often. They sacrifice their inner peace. Like, I feel this is true of myself. um i I'll sacrifice my own inner peace to maybe keep the peace, and long term I don't think that's a good thing.
I agree with that. And I also think too, like you said, it's the woman condition. We as women have, society has kind of normalized that, you just give, that's your job, you care for your children, you care for your husband, you give everything you have to the people you love, but and you don't want to step on any toes. You just kind of want to be like complacent and just make people happy. But really, I think that for me, I've learned that so that has to do with our dark feminine energy, and a lot of us are disconnected from it. And what our dark feminine energy is it's only called dark because it's deemed unacceptable from society. And it is the quality within every woman has it and you can access it, but it is the side of you that does what you want, says what you want to say. And she is the woman who has boundaries and is not pushed around. So some women who kind of emanate this darkness, and darkness is not bad, it's just uncommon. If you see a woman speak her mind and share her opinion and be like, no, this is not okay. This is not acceptable. It kind of shocks people because, like you said, society has conditioned us as women to give and to do everything and to just be like not cause any issues. you know
I don't know if I think it's society so much, like probably partly, but I think it's the nature of being a woman. We're there to nurture not only obviously our offspring, but we try to nurture all the people around us all the time. And so I wonder, I shouldn't say I don't, something I don't agree. I just wonder how much of it is society. I think part of it is society, but I think part of it is just the nature of being a woman.
I can understand that. I don't say I fully agree with it, but it's a good point.
Okay, what about you? What are you letting go of?
Mm. I am letting go of my addiction to suffering this year. And I think that can look different for a lot of different people. So for me, one of the main things that caused me to be addicted to suffering is always being late for everything. And I feel like no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, I'm late. And what I've realized is when I'm early to things, I actually don't know what to do with myself. It feels wrong. And my brain, I've conditioned myself to be like, I need to be in a hurry, I need to rush, you know, um, things aren't safe. It's not normal if I'm not like trying to do 10 things at the same time and run out the door. And that is an addiction to suffering, which other people have it in many other ways. That's just how it manifests for me. But I always find myself feeling so flustered and and I'm like, why is it no matter what I do, I'm always late? But it's because that addiction to suffering, and I don't set things up in advance to make my life easier for myself. And I think a lot of people, we've kind of been conditioned to believe that everything has to be a struggle, and that if you're not rushing or you're not multitasking, you're not doing it right, and your life is just easy, which people really frown upon people having easy lives. But why wouldn't you want your life to be easy and flow and go naturally? um and I think a lot of that is, again, society. And society is such a blanket term. When I say it, I think a lot of people like to be like, oh, society this and society that. But I think, like, on a collective note, the majority of us are programmed to suffer. We don't know how not to. So for 2024, I really want to like ease into life and just flow with everything. I don't want to suffer. I want to just have everything go. I want everything to be easy, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, yes, you need to have challenges that force you to grow, but your life doesn't have to be this constant struggle, tug of war, like fighting with yourself and fighting with everything around you. Like, I actually think life gets to be easy. Why wouldn't you want your life to be easy? Why wouldn't you do the things to make your life easier or feel like it flows more naturally?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Do you think that's just automating the things that you do every day, in a sense?
Yes and no. Certain things, yes, they do need to be habitual. I have certain morning practices that I do that if they aren't habitual and I don't do them every single day, I do feel the difference in my overall well-being and just how I show up in my everyday life. And that's things like journaling, meditation, moving my body, stretching my body. But I don't think everything needs to be so structured. Like that's part of also the addiction to suffering, because then when you don't do those things, you kind of beat yourself up, you know? And for me, I don't, there are certain things where like, today I feel like going for a walk. I'm just gonna go for a walk because that's what feels good right now. Or I feel like going to a cafe. Or like, not everything has to be so structured and planned out. And I used to have this
Mhm.
I would have my day in Google Calendar, like color blocked every single minute of every single day what I was doing. And I thought that was what I had to do to feel productive and to feel successful. But really, I feel my best when I have my main things that I need to get done throughout the day. There's those priorities where you're just like, okay, I have to do this. It's just a part of life. But I like to have like free time blocks where I just listen to my body. What would feel so good for me to do right now? And sometimes that's reading, sometimes that's spending time with the family, sometimes it's literally doing nothing. And sometimes when we have that addiction to suffering, or like doing nothing feels wrong. Sometimes we always feel like we have to be doing something. But yeah.
I think we live in a really interesting time right now because um, I've actually like realized that in the last few years that people um, yeah, the people struggle to not have things to do, and I think a part of it is due to, like, you got to remember we grew up in a time where there weren't cell phones and there wasn't Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and Snapchat and all of these things. And so I actually feel um I definitely feel for generations coming up because we know what it feels like to have free time, and where now society views that as doing nothing and being unproductive. That, to me, that's creative space, right? I like call it the third space. You need blocks of time where you're not just running from one thing to the next to the next to the next, filling up every second of your day. You actually need time to be bored and time to sit quietly with yourself without being entertained or without trying to seek motivation, trying to find motivation on, on your phone or whatever. And so, yeah.
That's so true. I've noticed most people, when there's nothing to do, it's almost they can't handle not having anything to do. I think I use this word programmed a lot, but I truly believe our brains are like computers, and our thoughts and our actions, those are programmed within us. And I truly believe that if you look at the older generations where, you know, they had to work hard and they had to struggle to survive. Everyone was just trying to get by and survive. And then you have older people like, I don't know, sometimes, for example, my grandparents, they'll be like, oh, like you have to work hard, you're lazy. You hear this a lot from older generations. So a lot of us feel so guilty, I find, for not doing anything, but really not doing anything is so good. Like you said, it gives you room for creative space.
Yeah, I think it will be something that younger generations will have to learn about. Like, it will be something that you guys will have to be intentional about, like intentional, and learn how to create the third space, right? Because like I said, we're like this kind of like the tipping generation where we've had both. Like we did not have, everyone didn't have a computer or a laptop or a device, and everyone didn't stream services. Whereas like kids growing up now, it'll be just a way different experience. You guys will have to be really, really intentional about creating that time. I remember having a conversation with someone a couple of years ago, and I was telling them how the like music to my ears was when Jack, your little brother, would say, "I'm bored." And they were laughing at me because I heard him say, "I'm bored." He probably had picked it up from, maybe one of the older kids or something. And my response to him was, "Oh my goodness, that's actually amazing." Boredom is where creativity is birthed, right? That's where we get ideas. And so you guys will have to find that time.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. Okay, should we go on to the next? Okay. Something I'm letting go of, and I think it's a lifetime process probably. And I see it in a lot of people, and it comes out in different ways, is fear of failure.
That's a great one.
Hmm.
I think that it holds a lot of us back from we have this perception of time where we're living in the future and we're like, okay, to protect ourselves too. If this goes bad, what could possibly happen? Like maybe I can't afford to feed myself, maybe I can't pay my rent. And then those fears stop us from even taking action to do the thing we want to do when we actually have no idea what's going to happen. We have no idea. We can't predict it at all. And out of trying to preserve ourselves. And we just come up with worst case scenario so that if it does happen, we've already prepared ourselves for what it happens. And a lot of us, it scares us so much that we don't even want to take that step towards the what ifs.
Yeah, I think it's definitely also tied to like one of the other things on my list of things to let go of, which is not going all in on things. I think the two they're kind of married to each other, right? We have fear of failure, so we don't go all in on things just in case they don't work. But I have this question constantly of myself and of other people. What if you just went all in on it and just to see what would happen? Can you imagine if people just lived that way? If you went all in on your relationships, if you went all in on business, if you went all in on health and fitness, like what would that look like?
I think certain personality types, it can be very dangerous. Say like addictive personality types where, certain things like a relationship, you do want to go all in, but not right away. You ease into it, you learn about each other, you realize if you're actually meant for each other. I think a lot of people, like you said, they're either all or nothing. And you need to find that teetering balance between the two where you're acting on what you said you're going to do, but you're not going so overboard and forcing things because nothing ever comes out of forcing.
No, I think when I say going all in on things, though, I don't mean making things happen. Like what I mean is, I guess in the realm of the way I see the world, like the lens I see things through is the lens that, I coach people through as well. And so often people will hold on to something, we talked about this before, where people live so much in the past and in the future, but not right now. And so when people don't go all in on things, they hold on to parts of their past, or things that may have served them at one point or may have helped them get through a difficult time. They hold on to these things without actually just going in on what matters today. Right? If you went all in on what mattered today, right now, forget about the past, forget about the future, just what matters today. If you do the best you can with today, what will happen?
I like you when you word it like that because I do, like, even with the explanation I just gave, that was very much thinking in the future tense. Whereas you're right, if you just today, what can I do today that will make me feel successful and accomplished today? And it's all those days compounded together that create you to getting that result that you want to get. Yeah. I think too, you're gonna laugh at this, but the perfect example of trying to go all in was a few weeks ago. I I'm young woman. I'm at the peak of my fluctuation of hormones. I'm in my young 20s, and sometimes I have skin problems. And the other like a couple weeks ago, I was like, I need to get rid of everything with any harsh chemicals. I need to get all new makeup. I need to get all new skincare. And then I was just like trying to micromanage and control everything because I'm like, something's not working. I must get rid of everything and overhaul everything. And because like that's my personality, a very all in type of person. And you had me sit down and you're like, look, Ella, just do what you can today. Start by taking one thing out and see where it goes from here. I'm so glad we had that conversation because all I did was I changed a couple small things, the cleanser I was using, and I added a couple of really good skincare products. And now I don't even deal with that issue anymore. You know,
I was
I
listening
think
to
we had that conversation because I think it's perfect for this moment.
I was listening to another podcast recently, and it's someone I think does amazing, amazing work in the world right now. His name is Brian Johnson. He has a platform called Heroic, and I just love his philosophies on everything. But he talked about being intentional about living a life of excellence today, and I think that I'm like, if you apply that to all the things just today, like don't worry, don't get caught up worrying about the future, right? We need to know where we are today on the map so that we can get to our destination. But on the road, we might change, we might evolve and change where we want to go. But if we just know today what things will make us happier, healthy, more wholesome, have a better experience of ourselves, more connected, and we go all in on those things today without thinking of what happened last week or last year, what happened, what's going to happen in the future. I think our experience of ourselves will be way different.
That's so good. I think with that all or nothing mentality, like you don't realize actually what happens if you start doing something, say like starting a business, or this could be applicable to anything. You just start, you do what you can today. That brings you closer and you make pivots. I think people are like, oh, I have to quit if nothing works out, but you just pivot where you are. I heard this quote somewhere and I don't even remember exactly what it said, but it was speaking of don't quit, just pivot, make pivots. Slightly change the direction you're going and you will get to where you're supposed to be if things aren't working out.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually so true. Also, I apologize because I'm just kicking over something here, so I keep muting myself and okay, good. Okay, what about you? What's next on your list of things to let go of?
Say I want to let go of, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, but like people pleasing tendencies, worrying about how I'm being perceived. That's my biggest thing. My fear of being seen, which just doing this alone already is helping that. But I'm this creative person and I'm learning to reconnect with that. But I think I know I have all these good ideas, but sometimes I'm scared that they're too good or that I'll share them. And I'm so afraid of being misunderstood. So I'm fearful of sharing creative and ideas based from like my heart and my passions, because I'm like, what if someone says something about it and it changes my mind about how I feel about myself? So I'm really trying to learn, and that's one of the things I want to let go of, is that fear of how I'm being perceived, and how I'm being perceived and being seen by others.
Here's a question for you. Do you think, or how much of that do you think is rooted in self-doubt?
I wouldn't Hmm. I just think I'm not like, my mind doesn't go to the place, I'm not worthy enough, I can't do anything. I know I can move mountains if I wanted to. I know, just based off of how I make other people feel and the interactions I have with others, I do have a lot of power, and I'm a very strong person intellectually, spiritually. It's more that this is totally a limiting belief that I'm also working on, but I'm so young and I feel I don't have the experience to be taken seriously. So I'm scared to share what I think about things and someone be like, "Well, you're young. How do you know?" You know? Like, for some reason that just freaks me out.
You know what though, to be honest, I don't know if that ever really leaves. Like I think that the reason I asked you about how much of that you thought was rooted in self-doubt, not because you doubt your ideas, but like I honestly struggle with a lot of the same things. Like I think of all the things I could do with my platforms and with the influence that I've gained over the years, and it still comes up. Like we are going to do a lifting clinic, but we postponed it because like there were a couple extenuating circumstances as well, but a big part of it was like I was like, am I prepared, even though I coach this every single day, am I prepared to do a lifting clinic? What if I teach something wrong and somebody who has more experience than I have calls me out on it, right? And what if I don't know the answer?
That's great. I think this is so common for people to deal with. I'm in a course right now, and one of the things she was speaking about was how she had this client, and her client was in the same industry as you. She's like, I really have this burning desire to share videos of like how to do certain exercises and to normalize women like lifting heavier in the gym and doing certain things. But she said that she was so scared that someone would comment on the video and be like, you have wrong form.
Mhm.
And basically, how she explained the conversation going, how it went was she asked, like, oh, do you follow other people online who post the same kind of things you do? And she's like, yeah, of course. And she's like, what would you do if that person was lifting with improper technique? And the girl was like, I'd probably just be like, oh, her technique is wrong. But you wouldn't be like, her technique is wrong. How dare she? She has no idea what she's doing. You're a terrible person for teaching people. You
That's
know,
such a good point.
it's so true. And she went on to say that, like, you wouldn't care. And even like this person, they wouldn't delete their whole account and never post again and be like, I don't know anything. Oh my God, I don't know anything. I can't show my face again. No, you're like, oh, I didn't know this. Thank you so much for teaching me what I was doing was wrong. I'm actually going to go do more research and learn more. And basically, the point of her explaining all of this was to then tell us that you in you can never do or say the wrong thing because at every moment, at every given time, you are speaking your 100% truth.
That's
And
so true.
so you can share something and it can be wrong, but it's not wrong because it was true to you. And someone can correct you and then you can change your truth. And
That's
and people respect you more too if you're to be like, "Hey, so I actually found out that I was teaching you how to do this incorrectly, and I want to correct that so that I can give you proper information that will benefit you better."
Mhm.
And people admire that even more. When you can
Yeah.
admit that you're wrong, it almost builds more trust.
Just listening to you talk and just talking on this conversation and knowing that so many people struggle with it. A lot of people struggle with it, but not everybody struggles with it because we all know someone who didn't have experience in XYZ, but they did it anyway. So I feel like just listening to this conversation, it ties back to not going all in on things. like I said, we all know someone who didn't have the experience or the, well, like quote unquote, the expertise, but they did it anyway, and they learned along the way. And I, excuse me, I think that's admirable as well.
Mhm. It's really a lot of like getting in your own way. I think that's something I also want to let go of. Getting in your own way, worrying about how you'll be perceived when really, if you're authentic to who you are, you're not saying things to like impress people, but you genuinely just have the like desire to share and help other people, even if you are sharing the wrong information. It's your truth at the time, so it's not technically wrong. Even though there can be things to prove against it, you can always change your beliefs. And I think a lot of us don't think like, I think a lot of us think, oh, I said this, I have to back up my word, I have to defend myself to the death. But you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to change your ideas. You're allowed to change who you are at any given second, at any day. Yeah.
It's so funny. I totally agree with that. And do you know how many times I've done that in my career, like in my space as a, like a fitness coach, like a wellness and fitness coach? Like there are things that I would have told people when I was 21, 22, 23, the way I would have coached them. Now, I think if I ever ran into those same people, it would be such a different experience for them, because I've learned so much along the way, right? And not only have I learned so much, that just the research that's coming out on women and health, like women's health and women in fitness and women and bodybuilding is so different. Women in nutrition, women in hormones, like all the research is so great right now.
A large
We
majority of the
really,
studies were done on men, and
like
they
until 2016, probably majority of the studies were done on men. And so now what I would tell people that I worked with 15 years ago would be so different. Even the way I coach myself is so different. And I don't feel bad about what I used to think. It's just what we knew from, women's fitness magazines.
exactly. And at the time, that was like the highest level of knowledge and expertise.
Mhm.
And that was what you knew. That was your truth at the time. It wasn't wrong, but now you've learned more, so you can tell differently.
Mhm. It's so funny. I want to keep this moving along, but I'm looking at my list. I had a list of 10 things that I was letting go of, moving into the next 12 months. And it's so funny how every one of them ties together. So my first one was ignoring inner peace, like not doing things that are true to myself, to try to spare other people, or to try to not create waves or whatever. Fear of failure, self-doubt, not going all in on things, perfection, comparison, living in the past, and not living up to my potential. Those are all things that I want to let go of, but they're all, now I listening to us, this conversation and how it's evolved, I'm like, oh, they're really all one and the same, aren't they? They're
You know,
all rooted in the exact same space.
that's so true. Even when I was sharing everything I've shared, I would like catch myself saying things that I was already speaking about before, and I was like, oh, this is so connected.
It is all really connected. So what is the root of that? If we like dug deep, what is the root of that? Not being authentic to who you are, not knowing who you are. What do you think it is?
I'm so sorry, you cut out. Can you repeat that?
I just said going through that list, going through a list of things to leave behind and knowing how like intertwined each of them are. What do you think the root of each of those things is? Because the root is the same
Like for yours
for
or
all of them. Like I think it's not living authentically, just for either. Like what do you think it is?
I,
Authenticity?
mm, I would say for yours, I don't know. Can you repeat them, please?
Ignoring inner peace, fear of failure, comparison, self-doubt, not going all in on things, perfection, living in the past, and not living up to my full potential.
I actually think I disagree with you with authenticity because I think you're a very authentic person and you just do what is you all the time. You know, you would never go against that. Why would you? I actually think it stems from childhood and unresolved wounds of lack of worthiness for both of us. And
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing. I think I'm still like my self-esteem and everything has significantly skyrocketed in the past year, the past 5 years. But it's not just something that you're one day you're like, I am this perfect being. I never do anything wrong. Bow down, world. Like, it's just not like that. You're always I find in conversations and even arguments with other people, I learn about myself. I'm like, oh, this is touching something. What is that? And usually it's something unresolved from my childhood that has to do with not feeling like I know, which stems from not feeling good enough.
Mhm.
And I think life is this continual journey of learning who you are, growing into different versions of yourself and discovering those versions of yourself. And the best tool you can use is not living in the past, but looking back at your past and then taking the lessons you've learned to apply to the current version of yourself that you're in. And
Mhm.
yeah, what do you think? I think I'm not giving a direct answer, but that's just kind of where
That's
my
a good answer. I just think like there are times when probably when I feel like I know who I am. And I would say that I live generally and not generally. I definitely act in accordance to my values, which leads me to live an authentic life, right? My opinions are authentic to me, my perspectives are authentic to me and my, the things that I've had in my life. But yeah, definitely. I think as soon as you said that lack of worthiness, I was like, oh yeah, for sure. Like not feeling like you're, yeah. We can't even get into that on this one because
And I
it's too
think
deep.
it's so it is deep. I think it's so scary for people to admit that.
Mhm.
But deep down, every single human feels it at some point in their life.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
pretty normal.
Mhm.
And you don't sit in that lack of worthiness. You understand why you have it and you allow yourself to grow. But you're always going to have it in any area of your life.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
it's learning to grow away from it, learning to understand why you have that feeling. And that's what helps you go evolve further and become even closer to the version of yourself that you came here to be.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It just kind of brings me back to the thoughts or the thought processes around getting to know yourself better, right? All of these things when you say, oh, it stems back to a lack of worthiness as a child or something unresolved. Um, just approaching everything with a genuine curiosity of why you said things that touch you, why this has been like such a bright and shining light in my life the last 5 or 6 years when I first learned about doing deep inner work. And good Lord, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of what that looks like. Because every day I'm like, oh, there's something else to work on. but
That's
but approaching it not with like something I have to work on a lot is approaching those things without judgment, but with curiosity, not judging myself for feeling a certain way or not judging myself for like inaction, like not doing the thing. I always do the thing I said I was going to do. But when there's a stall there saying, okay, what is this? What, not judging it and saying to myself, why aren't you? You're fine. Just go ahead and do it. You're fine.
what
You can.
kind of defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do, healing. And I think too, people have this like glorified like healing is this beautiful thing where you just become this magical entity being. But no, it's dark and it's gruesome and it's not for the weak. You learn things about yourself. You basically relive everything that you've pushed down into yourself. And it's terrifying. And it's super emotional and it's scary at times, but you do it for the purpose of letting it go and becoming who you're supposed to be. And you do have to ask yourself the questions. And at one point in my life, I'd have a conversation with someone and they'd say something that triggered me, and I'd be like, ugh, why do you have to say that? Why do you have to be that way? And I'd retreat back to my room or I'd run away and never resolve it. And it just get stuffed down. And I'd be like, ugh, 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 like stupid world. But now, through the way I just described healing sounds so scary. And it can be, but you learn to sit in the discomfort and, like you said, ask yourself questions and understand why you're having it. And you get better at it the more you do it too. Now, when something happens that triggers me, I'm like, that touched something in me. That hurt. What was that? Why did I have that? What can I do to understand this better and to let go of it? Like now I get excited when something triggers or hurts me. Because I'm like, oh yeah, I get to grow some more. But it's it's easy and it's not. It's hard. You have to choose to do it for yourself, not for other people. And it's so uncomfortable, but the reward that you gain from it is so much more grander than like suffering in the pain, the emotional pain for years and years and years and years on end.
Yeah, it's hard in the beginning, messy in the middle, most definitely. And I suppose we'll see what it's like on the other side.
Like you don't know though until you die.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Do you have any last thoughts, words, comments on things you want to leave behind? I feel like these are all things that hopefully someone listens to this and it touches them enough that they're like, you know what, I need to do some work on that too to leave that behind.
Um, One thing I wrote down, I thought we were asking questions to each other, and I do really want to ask you this question because I think it's a great way to kind of end this off. But I think a lot of people perceive letting go as giving up, or like letting something win or take control over them. But I personally see it as like releasing something that is no longer beneficial or serving you to then make new room for things that are just naturally supposed to come into your life. Um, and for new things to just take that place of what the old thing had. How do you perceive letting go, and what does letting go mean to you?
Um, Probably really similar to you. I think letting go to me means creating peace with it, right? Not I know what you mean when you say people think it's about winning or losing. For some reason, we've allowed like winning or losing or succeeding or failing to dominate everything that we do. And I just don't think it's always cut down to that. It's not about winning or losing, or, I don't think, yeah, I don't think that when you let go of things, to me, you don't lose at all. You gain so much because you gain inner peace. You gain space to explore other things. When we hold on to things, and again, like I try to use all the people around me, we talk about this a lot, but I try to use every interaction I have with people. I try to view it as like a mirror of what the work I need to do. Like when somebody says or does something, say, I know this is going to sound funny, but if someone is doing something that I find off-putting, I try to look at that and say like, okay, like what about this? Am I supposed to, there's something in here for me, because what can I learn from this, or how is this mirroring how I treat these other things? But yeah, I think people just hold on to things for so long for fear of letting them go. And then they just manifest, issues manifest themselves into, what did you say at the beginning of this call? Addiction to suffering. And so I think it's all, it's all the hero's journey. It's all, you have to go through it, and you have to realize it, and you have to work through it to come up on the other end of it. And I think lose by letting go of something. You're not losing a battle. You're actually gaining everything if you do the work.
And if you allow it to.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like I just said a whole bunch of stuff that didn't make sense there, but hopefully.
Oh, it did. I was listening. It was really good. That was awesome.
I feel like speak my way through that, but don't you find, like, I find like when I see other people and the things that they hold on to, that they won't let go of.
For example, let's do a simple example, like a relationship. People hold on to this and they're so scared of like who they'll be without it, what happens next when it leaves. But most of the time you see people, when they finally let go of this, like for the sake of this example, a relationship, they're holding on to it. When they finally let it go and it leaves, like, haven't you ever seen those? You 100% have seen those people who are like in these brutal relationships that are like unfulfilling, hollow. They just do it out of the sake of like wanting to be with someone so they don't have to be alone. And then finally the relationship ends and their life is so much better. And they're like, oh, why didn't I do this sooner? But they were just holding on to it because they fear.
I think it all stems back to, or maybe it doesn't all stem back to, but I think there's definitely a component of the way we live in the past and the future. And I hate to always bring it back to like, the lens of coaching that I do, but it's what I do all day, every day. And so it's just, yeah, I don't know. I think that people, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Sorry.
That's totally fine. Do you have anything else you want to ask me or say?
No, I actually love this conversation because I think that we could go really deep on some things, but oh, sorry. Let me come back to that because I know where I was going with this, with the lens of coaching.
Okay.
Where people, like very few people, I always have women tell me, I want to be like this in the future. And they have this idea of how they want to be. I want to be this weight. I want to be this size. I want to look this way. And then they always show me pictures of themselves from the past, but they're no longer that person. That person no longer exists, right? And they never actually live and exist in the future in the moment, in today, in right now, doing the things that they could do today to be the person, like acting like the person that they say they want to be in the future. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I think all things life, we talk about this all the time, how everything is literally a blueprint for everything else. And so I always use like women and their striving to achieve goals in fitness and health is a blueprint for everything in life. Like, right? Like if they just take time to live in the moment and do what matters today, like do what matters most today to become who you think you want to be in the future, you'll get 1% better. You'll get better.
But in 365 days, you're 365% better. Like,
yeah, exactly. Anyway, I wanted to come back to that because I was like, oh, I lost my train of thought here, but
I'm glad you did. That was good. That was awesome.
No, I don't have anything other than that to add. Just, don't forget about the past. Don't worry about the future. You can't forget about the past, but you can live in the now and do what matters today.
I think, yeah, that's like the main lesson of this call. Do what you can today, do what matters today.
Mhm. Do what matters most today. Amazing. Well, I always love chatting with you, and I actually can't wait for our next recording. So
Too.
I'll wrap this one up with a bow and sign it off.
Bye.